And we're back at West China Tea, Whiskey Provisioner with the Texas Whiskey Geek. Caleb is going to be showing us another whiskey. Sohan is going to be showing us another tea, and that's what we're here for.
It's the name of the game.
Yes.
So I'm starting off with, this has kind of been my tea of the summer, 2024 summer. This one and Guizhou Red, which we're almost out of, which is why I'm not doing that one. But red teas, which is what we call black teas, right? Lipton chai, Earl Grey, sweet tea. All those we'd call those red teas. The Chinese word for those fully oxidized teas are red teas. Okay. There's 6 different types of tea. There's green, there's yellow, there's oolong, there's red, there's white, there's hei cha, the fermented teas. And so what we just had would be technically a green tea on its way to being a hei cha, sheng pu'er, aged sheng pu'er. And so what we're doing next is a red tea. What does that mean? It just means that it's fully oxidized. Green tea is unoxidized, red tea is fully oxidized. So the tea that people in the West, America specifically, are most familiar with is going to be red tea. When British people are drinking tea, it's red tea. When Turkish people are drinking tea, it's red tea. When you're at a barbecue, you're drinking, red diamond, that's red tea. And this is just a very niche red tea. It's from Guizhou, a kind of remote province in southwestern China. Okay. The tea there is really good. This is their local cultivar called Tai Cha. It's unique in that it turns purple in the late spring, early summer. So it's, green tea plants are green like most plants, but sometimes they're purple. Most purple tea plants are purple their whole lives, but some tea plants turn purple with the change in the temperature, change in the weather. So this Tai Cha cultivar, that's kind of like a landrace, just like an heirloom, tea plant that's grown in this part of Guizhou. It turns purple gradually as the weather gets warmer each year. You start to get these purple leaves coming out. This is picked when the leaves are still green. And this is called iya iye, which means one bud, one leaf, which is just a plucking standard. Okay. So the name of the tea is basically just like saying it's like calling it grade A maple syrup. It's just a grade. The highest grade is Danya, just the buds. Second grade is Iya Iya, one bud, one leaf. Third grade is Iya Liangye, one bud, two leaves. So this is that kind of middle grade. Mm-hmm. So it's nice. It's like a premium, but not the tip top grade. I love it. I'm kind of picky about pure bud Danya teas, that highest grade, because they tend to be very light in flavor and expensive. Okay. And I find that, for my taste and also the taste of our audience, they tend to like a little bit more robust flavor. Okay. And they also don't want to pay that super high premium price for that Danya tea. So I like this grade, and this is it's not the only Iya Iya red tea we have, but there's just no other name for it. We never give it another name, so we just named it after the grade. I'll give you a smell. This one you'll get a smell off of on the dry leaf before I've heated it up, unlike that last tea we had, because this is not aged, this is fresh. Mm-hmm. This is 2024, and this is by the Rao brothers, Xiangge, one of the Rao brothers, he's our contact there, and they're really elevating this kind of traditional cultivar that is usually used for a more kind of primitive process style called guan cha, which we also carry, but this is them, they established the first organic tea farm in Guizhou, and it's a very professional operation. You put on little plastic booties to go in and a lab coat and a hairnet and everything. Wow. And they've got their whole, setup going. So he's taking this it's kind of it'd be like someone taking a very local product, a moonshine or something, and then elevating it and making it a really professional operation and producing something really, really high grade out of it.
So where is your pain point, Caleb, on whiskeys, purchasing whiskey? There are certain points where the value of what you're getting is diminishing. You can start paying a certain amount of money, and for, then the lower end, what's really good in the lower end, what's the mid-range, and what's the high end of what it is that you're willing to pay for a whiskey?
Well, that's water, that's for the toad.
So, you're trying to find the point of diminishing returns then of what you're buying, And I think I know people have said this before and you've heard it before, but the cost on whiskey is only related to the rarity, really. So if something is really expensive, generally it means it's really rare, does not necessarily mean it's really good. So you got to kind of be careful about those point of diminishing returns. If you're going to go spend $200, $300 on a bottle, you might want to go taste it before you go and and purchase that, because there are some really damn good $300 bottles of whiskey, but there's also some really crappy ones out there. So
yeah, that's interesting. Tea can be that way, but I feel like there's more of a culture of the quality of the tea, and the actual lived experience of drinking the tea is more important, especially because there's a lot of counterfeiting that goes on in the Chinese tea industry. Maybe less now, but when I was coming up in the tea game back in the early 2000s, this was a big issue. And you've got these very famous, very rare teas, but how do you know what you're drinking is the real thing?
Yeah.
It's got the wrapper, it says the name, but so does a million other teas out there. And some of these very, very famous teas that are very, very tiny production scale, very small scale production, are so heavily counterfeited that the majority of what you get is counterfeit. And most people running around, even in China, will have never have had the real version of it. And then when I find when you do taste the real version, it is good and it is worth it and it does stand up to the price.
Yeah.
But so much of what you get is literally just fake. That you have to learn to trust your tongue. You have to learn. It's like I said in the last episode, I'm not an age queen. I don't care how old the tea is. I care how good the tea is. If it's good and it's old, then great. I'm not out there hunting for vintages, because that's a good way to get scammed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that happens. The same thing we were talking about in whiskey. The story that comes to mind is the Pappy Van Winkle. It was an inside job. People were diverting product.
Yeah, that's really nice.
And then when they recovered a lot of the product, unless it was in sealed bottles, they dumped it because they had no idea whether it was real or not.
Wait, what do you mean diverting the product?
So the employees at the factory were picking things up and walking home with them. Now,
so you had like pirate Pappy out there.
Yeah. There's a number of interesting tricks that I learned in the restaurant business, where I heard you hear these tales, and they become tall tales. But there was something that I learned in the restaurant business which I thought was ridiculous. It was called a steak meat belt. They would lay out cellophane on, and they would put steaks on the cellophane, wrap it, turn it into a belt, and take home steaks out of the restaurant.
You know what? Pay your people.
Yeah.
Pay your people. That's how you get people to be loyal and not put steaks in their clothes. Pay your people. Don't pay them $2.15 an hour.
Yeah. Most of the time, though, when I'm finding missing product, it was either not on the truck, it didn't get counted when it came in from the back door. So that was one person, probably a manager, who didn't pay attention. And then they have their nightly steak counts to see what's going on. They don't go back to find out where the missing ones are, which a lot of times what it is somebody miscooked a steak and they made it to the wrong degree of doneness. They went back and fixed their mistake, but hid their mistake in the trash can. So if you didn't look in the trash can, that's where your steaks were going missing.
I'm sorry, so they were wrapping up a steak, hiding it in the trash can, and then taking it home?
That happens too, but sometimes things will go out in the trash that shouldn't go out in the trash. But most of the time, from my experience, what was going on is people were making a mistake and they were hiding that they made a mistake by
So that's what the counts are. If you're it's not theft. It's underreporting. I just want to point out mistake.
Yeah.
Missing steaks.
Missing steaks.
Mistakes.
Yeah, I like it. It's great.
So tell us about we've got I'm excited about the whiskey for this one. We're going to taste this guy. Red tea.
I love this,
Beautiful, beautiful red tea. Everybody loves red tea. It's just got such a rich, sweet character to it, and like a bold character. It's what people think about when they think about tea in the West, especially. And I love being able to serve Chinese red teas to people who have only ever had commodity level Indian red teas. Not that all Indian teas are bad, but the legacy of the British Empire is shitty tea being produced in India that's extractive. You know what I mean? It's not the Indians' fault, it's the British's fault. But generally speaking, when people have encountered red tea, it's this very low grade red tea that is a commodity product that's grown on these huge plantations and then factory processing, crush, twist, curl, and then to be able to give someone like real serious artisan red tea like this one is a real pleasure.
Absolutely, this is excellent.
Yeah, there's an earthiness to this, and I'm trying to figure out whether that's a dark fruit note that I'm getting, or whether it's some kind of branch or leaf or green product.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got some savory notes.
Yeah, fruity, almost a perfumey kind of fruity quality to it, and then just like this maltiness, and
maltiness is good.
And someone was telling me that people will put tea. They will like put tea in whiskey to make it better or something. Have you heard of this?
Yeah, I've heard that. It's also cocktail making, and for some reason tea goes really well. I've done green tea whiskey cocktails and have brightened up a tea. I've done some dark tea syrups with basically just making a simple syrup out of dark tea, and using that in a cocktail, more like a sour type of cocktail, as the sweetener. So yeah, tea is actually fantastic in cocktails, and it is a really good pairing with whiskey.
Do an infusion or something with your whiskey.
We should do that. We should do that.
You do some cocktails here?
Not cocktails.
No.
So what the people were telling me was you do an infusion where you're putting the leaves in the bottle.
Oh, yeah.
And you're steeping it, and it was something that apparently people would do to make lower quality whiskey. Okay. The reason I heard this story is because that's how jasmine tea came about.
Right.
It's like you've got low grade green tea. You want to make it smell like high grade green tea, so you scent it with jasmine flowers, but you pull the jasmine flowers before you sell it, so you don't see the jasmine flowers. And then people smell it and they're like, oh, this green tea is so fragrant. Yeah. They think it's a really high grade green tea. Well, it's not. It's a low grade green tea that's been scented with jasmine flowers. That's the origin of jasmine tea. You know, we've got jasmine tea that has the jasmine flowers in it because we're not trying to trick people. But someone was like, oh, like with tea and whiskey. I'm like, say what? Because I'm very invested in both tea and whiskey, and I'd never heard of that. But apparently this is something that people would do maybe back in like Prohibition times or whatever, to take a lower quality whiskey.
Correct.
Make it sound like it, or make it taste like it's something that's a little more
aged, a little bit more complex. So I'd love to try that with some red tea like this. I think that'd be really good.
You're talking rectifiers and rectifying spirits. They also would put in things. We should go look for a recipe. They also did like prune juice to make it look dark. They did tea. There's a lot that they did. They would add neutral grain spirits because it was easier to get into barrels with the older whiskey. Because how often are you getting shipments in nowhere, Nebraska,
of corn spirits or whatever?
Exactly. So you're in a small town in the middle of nowhere, and you're a little innkeeper, and your next wagon load that's going to come through that town, or the next train load that's going to come through that town, is going to be weeks away, and you're running low on the weekend. Add a little bit of that vodka in there, add a little bit of tea, just
fib it a little bit, and make it seem like
a really nice infusion device. It's like some of the tea instruments where they have a basket,
and then it drains down
through. So it's a bottle with a spear that has those little holes in it, and the jar lid has that spear, so you could put tea in that and see what we get out of it.
I would be interested to do that because we're aging tea in a whiskey barrel now.
We should, it'd be great. You should get some White Dog and see how it changes it, and then get something that maybe it would complement maybe
the same distillery, the White Dog. And the
barrel aged whiskey, and then see. You know what? Li Shu Lin, who makes the last tea that we had, that Doomroy, that 2005, he does this where he uses Guizhou, which is Chinese liquor, which people are like, it's made of rice. It's not necessarily made of rice. It can be made of any damn thing. Right. His has got some sorghum in it and some sweet potato, and I think some rice, and I think some wheat. But it's just whatever. It's usually grained, but it's very, very micro. I mean, this is the dude that he went to school with still, that is like sealed with mud. You know what I mean? Like they're sealing off they're sealing off the pipes to make sure it's airtight with like clay.
Yeah. Right.
And so this is like very like primitive level production, making this like unfiltered single, maybe one or two distillations to Guizhou.
Right.
That is very flavorful already. Yeah. But then he's putting honey and red tea that he makes in it and infusing it. And this is something that he likes to drink. Yeah. And it's really good. It's really, really nice. And it's coming out, basically, it's White Dog. Yeah. It's basically White Dog, and he's doing it. There's no barrel involved. He's just aging it in glass, and he's got his tea and his honey in there, and it's like wild honey that he's harvesting from the mountain, and it's pretty cool.
You should absolutely do it. I mean, it's called a distilled spirit specialty once you've done something to it, like age it in another barrel or age it, with add something to it or whatnot. But yeah, absolutely. I've done this with wood chips, Albarana wood chips before. I've done those experiments, but tea, I imagine, would also bring out some awesome flavors.
I mean, that's what gin is, right?
It can be. There's a number of different processes with gin. You can put the gin in the still and make a tea out of vodka and all of the botanicals,
And then distill it?
And then distill it.
That'd be cool too.
Or there's another thing you can do is they have something called a gin basket, which is a basket that goes in the vapor layer as it's distilling, and you pull out from the vapors. Or you can do a post hoc where you just take the distilled product and you put the botanicals in it until you get the flavor that you want, and then strain them out like a tea.
All three of those are called gin.
All three of those are called gin.
Wow. What about like chartreuse? Is that post hoc?
Chartreuse is extremely complicated. It's very old, ancient recipes. Only a few
Monks.
people know what the recipe is in. And right now, the monks don't need the money, so they're not making it, and it's really hard to find.
Wait, really?
Yeah. So
Wait, you can't just get chartreuse now?
Yeah, there's a shortage of chartreuse at the moment.
Yeah.
And there's two different kinds. There's a yellow and a green chartreuse. And so in the liquor stores, there are a number of people who are trying to find alternatives, and there are a number of craft distilleries that are trying to create their own recipe of chartreuse.
I love that the monks are just like, nah, we're good. We're cool.
We've made enough. We can just back from that.
That's neat. Someone needs to go and shrinkflation those monks until they make chartreuse again.
So I heard in Texas there was one distillery that's famous in Austin. There's an oak tree called a treaty oak, and then somebody tried to kill it by basically putting a bunch of poisons and stuff on this heirloom heritage tree, and that distillery, there was somebody there, I can't remember who I was talking to, but they were trying to find a live oak tree that was not protected or that was going to be brought down because of storm damage or whatever, and they were trying to make a barrel out of that salvage wood. They had a lead, they knew where there was a tree, the whole thing fell apart, they didn't get the tree, they weren't able to make the barrels. We talked about the way trees grow, and they have to be a certain height, they need to be fairly straight, because if there's...
To make a barrel.
Yeah, exactly, because the way that you cut that wood, you can cut the veins going through the wood, and the barrel's going to leak.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So,
Phloem and xylem. Yeah.
Apparently, somebody in Texas found...
Balcones was successful with that, apparently, yeah.
Nice.
So this is their all Texas Balcones Live Oak. They're calling this Live Oak Single Malt. So they took Texas barley. So barley was grown in Texas. They distilled it here in Texas. They got a hold of a live oak tree or a couple live oak trees that had been chopped down for whatever reason or another, and they aged those staves on the roof of their building for 3 years.
3 years?
Yeah. So they let them bake in the sun on the roof.
Get rained on.
All that stuff.
Freeze.
Yep.
Wow.
So 3 years, and then they sent it off to a cooperage, and they had enough to make, if I remember the story correctly, we need to talk to Balcones about this, but I think they said they had enough to make 5 barrels.
Wow.
And they only ended up with 3.
Wow.
Because they couldn't get the wood to work for a couple of the barrels.
Yeah. That makes sense. That you have to get the grain to be going exactly the right way and have that uniformity to get a watertight barrel.
Yeah. So then they took their Texas One single malt and they put it in these barrels, and they pulled it out and tested it and tasted it, and they just determined that the live oak makes a heavy impact really quickly. So they ended up pulling some out and then reusing those barrels and putting some new stuff in, and then pulling that out and reusing those barrels again. Right. And they blended all that together to create this.
Okay, so there they found that the barrels had a lot of juice, like wood juice, so they kind of did a couple flushes.
A lot of extraction, and Well, let me get you guys a glass
yeah.
here.
That's really dark. This happens in brandy as well, where you start off with newer barrels and you move things into older and older barrels.
And then you blend it all together.
You got it. I got you a monster hand. You left it at home. You're going to steal.
Just keep
whiskey.
it here. Yeah. Just keep it here. Wow, that is dark.
Yeah.
That's like Coca-Cola over here almost.
So this is this is a really unique whiskey, and I think after talking with the folks over at Balcones, I think they've determined they're not going to do full barrels of this again, but they might just do like barrel heads of live oak in order to kind of tame the flavors and the extraction they're getting on this.
Oh yeah, there's a whole lumber yard in there.
Yeah.
And 100% Texas grain, 100% Texas oak, made in Texas, distilled in Texas.
I like it. I like it. I like it.
It's very
A lot of
unique,
vanilla.
Yeah.
A lot of vanilla. I mean, if I'm trying to drink whiskey, I want it to taste oaky.
Right.
Well, this is a unique kind of oak, like live oak is giving you a different flavor than the American white oak that you're getting off of other, standard bourbons and things like that.
Yeah.
What about pecan? We got a big old pecan tree. They're going to cut it down.
Ooh.
Pecan barrel. Anyone done that yet?
Well-
that's the state tree of Texas.
Yeah, it is.
You got to be careful about what you're making barrels out of. I think most of the time when they're doing pecan, they'll take like pieces of pecan wood and throw it in the barrel, just because it's almost impossible to make barrels out of anything that isn't oak, really.
Interesting.
So,
Yeah, it has to do with how porous it is, how tight the grains are.
yeah.
Yeah.
Mesquite.
Wow, that is actually pleasant on the palate. There isn't a lot of woodiness on the palate.
I like it.
Yeah,
I like
yeah.
it. I got nothing bad to say about it. I like it. But I like, the lore on the show is like my first whiskey that I ever liked was Lefroy.
Right.
So I'm not put off by really strong flavors. I like really strong stuff, but
Yeah.
I like when actually I think it's going to really go well with the tea. So I'm going to I'll do a strong steeping of this to match this nice dark whiskey. But I like it. For being dark in color, it's very bright. It's very rounded. It's got some fruitiness to it. I'm not mad at it. I think it's really nice, and I really appreciate this. Like in Chinese, they say dragon head phoenix tail. It means all the way through the whole production process. Dragon head phoenix tail. It's all Texas. And
Well, that makes sense.
Yeah, I like that term.
dragon head phoenix tail. It means that the wood is Texas, the grain's Texas, the distillers are Texas. It's Texas all the way through.
I think I can taste the difference of the oak on this. It tastes what I imagine live oak tasting like if I were to go eat a tree.
Yeah, it definitely has. It's definitely bold. It's definitely, the oak is like definitely much more pronounced than when I usually taste the oak in a whiskey. But I like it. It's nice. What do you think, Corey?
Yeah.
I like it a lot.
I like it. Yeah, I think they should lean into that. I think that people would really develop a taste for this, and I think that because a lot of what bourbon's got to be in French barrels, right?
Right.
So I think that taking the production and localizing the production to Texas. Honestly, I think I'm super excited about Texas whiskey in a general sense. From this show, I think that what's happening here in Texas with whiskey is super exciting. We're winning awards and we're really making waves in the industry. And I think that part of that, being a Texan is part of being a Texan is just really being proud of being a Texan and being into Texas and the self-sufficiency of being a Texan. That's part of our identity. And I think that having Texas wood for Texas barrels for Texas whiskey is actually really cool, and being proud of that, assertive, kind of imposing flavor that you get from the live oak, because that's the classic Texas image, right?
Yep.
Big spreading oak with cows under it, you know, out in the field, and that's kind of this archetypal, you know, Central Texas image.
Yeah, Corey, you're probably going to have to throw in a picture of a live oak because those things are bendy and twisty.
That was my childhood. Was climbing. They're the great climbing trees for a little kid because you don't fall that far because the branches are just doing like this.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, the problem is that they're not great for barrels because they're twisted and bendy and go all over the place.
I've got one in my backyard that's practically leaning into the neighbor's yard.
Well, tell them that I love it.
Yeah.
Tell them, you know, tell them that I love it. I think it's great, and I think they should, you know, loud and proud.
Actually, Gabe and Emma were here at the tea house, and they were having a little employee retreat.
Oh, nice.
We had no idea they were here. That was like a week or two before we had Emma on the show.
Oh, for real? That's
yeah.
right.
So,
I remember them mentioning that.
Oh, that's right. You guys did have Emma on the show.
Yeah. She's great. She's just so freaking knowledgeable. Just like the depth of her knowledge. Oh. And I told these guys when we started the show, I'm like, it can't be all dudes. We got to have women on the show, you know. But it's the women who've been on the show have been outstanding. Like you know, it's not like a representation thing. They're just outstanding in their field.
Yeah.
There's a kick-ass blender coming in October to the Bastards Ball from Virginia Distillery, Amanda Beckwith, and I'm hoping that we'll be able to stop and talk with her. Because I love what they're doing over there at Virginia Distillery, the Courage and Conviction releases. Yeah, with the tea.
Yeah, it's good. This is like a really good pairing. I think that last pairing had some good stuff in it, but this is like a. The last one was like maybe like a this, you know. But this is like a.
This is getting darker, richer and more earthy. And yeah, it's really pairing well with the brightness on the initial and that heavy oak on the final.
Yeah, that brightness, that redness, boldness, assertive, you know, imposing even. I think the tea stands up pretty well to the whiskey. I think because the flavors are really complementary. But I like it. I think it's really unique. You know, it is different than the normal whiskey oak profile, and I like it. I think it's really cool. It's definitely better than a lot of other whiskeys I've tasted.
Yeah, wow. It's a fun one to explore for sure.
Gumption and chutzpah.
Yes.
That's what this whiskey is.
Yeah,
this is Texas gumption and a little bit of chutzpah.
But it's friendly. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's got the gumption and the chutzpah, but it's nice. It's friendly.
But these people, they really are craft people at Balcones. Like
they're very passionate about what they're doing. Yeah.
You know, Jared's doing. He's been doing ceramics. He's he's doing leather work. He's doing all of these other things. Like this is one of the things I wanted to showcase on the show was that people just aren't the things that they're doing. They're a collaboration of many different things and very interesting people in their own right with many passions.
I love Balcones just because the people there are extremely passionate about what they're doing, you know, and they're extremely knowledgeable about what they're doing. But man, they just like, if anybody, I keep saying passion, but that's what they have a lot of passion for this whiskey, and they have a lot of passion for the art of blending.
Right.
And I think they've mastered it.
6 years, aged at least 6 years. So of these 3 fills, the youngest is going to be 6 years.
Yeah.
That's, I mean, again, like we just had like that 4-year, and I was like, that's a long time to sit in the barrel for Texas whiskey. But I like it. I think that they should just freaking go for it. I think this is great.
Oh, that's exactly what they do. They push boundaries. They have been experimenting with different types of casks, different types of finishing casks, different types of grain. They've got these blue oak that they're doing, and that I really do like that as well. They're
searching for ways to like make something like this last 6-10 years. So they've actually went and got. Barrel isn't the right word. Was it a puncheon or they're 700 liter barrels that they're putting their whiskey in now to see if they can get 10, 15 years out of before it just
whiskey.
over oaks.
Because people love that age statement.
Yeah, and
People
one of those barrels.
Look at this. Look at that. Very similar color. Very, very similar color.
Yeah.
And that I don't know if the camera's going to be able to get that. Yeah, I can. Yeah, very similar. That's what they call it, red tea, right? But yeah, beautiful color, beautiful whiskey. I think it's great. I feel, as a Texan, a swelling pride for this Live Oak whiskey.
Yeah, Emmett told me when I was visiting that one of those barrels actually failed.
Yeah.
So you have 700 liters and it's gone. The barrel heads needed to be reinforced because they just go wavy with all the barrel heads are going straight across like slats. And then with the moisture inside and the temperature changes, they just turned into this wave.
Just put some saran wrap over the top. You know?
But one of those big ones failed then, huh?
Yeah.
Oh, that's tough.
This is nice. This is deep, complex whiskey. This has got caramel. It's got like caramel toffee notes. It's got some apple notes. Some like sweet kind of cooked apple notes. I think this is a huge success. I love this.
Oh yeah, I'm getting those apple notes.
Yeah, I think this is great.
Get 'em
I don't
before,
think
but
there's
yeah.
anything to I wouldn't say it's too bold at all. I think it's great.
What's the proof on that, Caleb?
It's high.
Yeah, I had to add a splash of water.
57%, so 114.
114. Yeah.
Try a splash. Let's see. Want some water? There we go.
Yeah, I saw one where Eric Waite went and took like 6 tablespoons of water, put a lid on it, and went to work and came back to talk about the whiskey from Balcones that I think it was Brimstone, that he was trying to crack open to get a really good analysis of what was going on inside of it. Oh, okay, it's a little water is bringing it a little bit more green.
Yeah. Almost like a rye.
Yeah.
I feel like the oak gives something almost like a rye, and I love rye.
Very drying on the finish.
Yeah.
Dry tongue.
Yeah. I like it. I like it a lot. I'm a fan. How many times can you use a barrel?
As many times as you want if you're in like Canada until it falls apart. The longer and longer you use it, the less and less you're going to get out of it. So usually you're going to be getting whatever was previously in there. So you're going to have from bourbon, you can only use it the one time, and then it's going to Scotland or the Caribbean or other places. In Scotland, they're going to call that first fill. It's the first time they filled it.
Wait, so Scotch is being made in bourbon barrels?
Yeah, but they also have other different barrels as well. So you can put it into sherry barrels. You can put it into port barrels. You can, yeah.
I always think of sherry. Okay, so the Scottish are using bourbon barrels to make Scotch.
Correct. Yep.
That's wild. Maybe I knew that, but I didn't remember that. So that's crazy.
They traditionally are using used barrels of some sort.
Right.
So
yeah. I always think of sherry, but I guess that makes sense.
And the more you use them, eventually they just become inert vessels.
Right, they just neutral. They're just wood. Yeah, they don't have any juice in them. But if the challenge they're facing is that this has got too much juice, maybe they can get, they're breaking ground here. They're breaking ground, so maybe
and in brandy and cognac, if you keep on transferring it into a new barrel, filling it up to the top, you're going to have less oxidation, less evaporation, because you're putting it into another barrel, filling it up to the top. There's less head space, and then you move that to another older barrel. You can slow down all of the amount of tannins and give it more time to marry and collect. So it's a blending.
Sounds like so much work.
It is.
Jesus.
Yeah, it is. And if they're doing a Napoleon brandy, they need a government official to come in and put their stamp on it. So that needs to be, because they're going to crack it open and they're going to move it somewhere else. They're going to need a government official to say, okay, everything happened the way it was supposed to happen.
Napoleon brandy, huh?
Yeah.
Well, I guess we'll talk about that in another episode. But I always think about that song. Brandy, you're a fine girl. Every time you say brandy, I got that song restarts in my head.
Okay, so we're going to thank Caleb for coming in here. You can find his news on Texas Whiskey Geek all over social media.
Yeah, TX_Whiskey Geek all over social media. Or you can go straight to my website, texaswhiskeygeek.com, and I've got all the information there too.
And we're lucky enough to be back here at West China Tea. Some of the things that have been happening around here are giving us more time in this space. So keep in touch with Sohan at West China Tea so that you can see and come visit, because we're getting into that fall weather.
Fall weather is tea season, but also piece of history. You can come experience this place and you can say you came here 20 years from now. You could say I went to the original West China Tea location on I-35 before they raised it and built the feeder road on it. So
and buy lots of stuff so that he doesn't have to move it.
Yeah, the more stuff you buy, the less stuff we have to move. So yeah, definitely. And thank you, Caleb, so much for bringing this. Honestly,
this was a great pairing.
It's a great pairing, fantastic pairing, and honestly, just a fantastic whiskey. This is definitely a standout whiskey for me. So I hope that makes its way back to Balcones and that they stick with it with this Live Oak, because I think it's awesome.
Yeah.
Cheers to y'all. Cheers to Balcones. Thanks for joining us.
Cheers.